if we're talking about chapter 18, the church is still standing, all right? Nothing has happened to them. I wrote kind of the way that this first paragraph is characterized, like I said that maybe the Klansmen are thinking, like, everything's fine, right? Like, this isn't a problem, right? It says, at first the Klan had assumed that it would not survive, but it had gone on living and gradually becoming stronger, okay? So, do you remember at the very beginning, before we even started reading, we read the poem, The Second Coming? Remember we read that? Yes or no? This center cannot hold. It's your epigraph to your book, okay? And when we think about our book, oh, my page fell out of my book. I put it on the board. So, when we think about that and what is inscribed in the very beginning, before we even start reading the book, it says, turning and turning the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Okay? So, there was a quote, I think, when whatever chapter it is, maybe chapter 15, when Obierica comes to visit Okonkwo for the first time, right? And Uchendu is talking about how, let me see. He's talking about, like, back in my day, like, we traveled all the time to other clans, right? Your generation does not know that. Those were the good days when man had friends in distant clans. Your generation does not know that. You stay at home afraid of your next-door neighbor. Even a man's motherland is strange to him nowadays. It says, people traveled more in those days. There's not a single clan in these parts that I do not know very well. Okay? While you may have overlooked that piece of evidence, don't. Okay? Because that's evidence to you to give meaning to that line, the center cannot hold. Right? So, as the years have gone on, the clans, there's been more civil war, if you will, and strife and conflict between the different clans, right? So, the clans have not been as united or as strong in their, like, inter-village relationships that they were back when Uchendu was young, okay? So, you bring that in tandem with the missionaries arriving. Okay, we talked about how before we started reading that the missionaries had this sort of like divide and rule kind of strategy for being successful in converting the people of the clans to Christianity, right? Essentially colonizing them. I mean, that's what they're doing, right? They're colonizing this area. So the fact that the tribes are not as close-knit as they were before, and the missionaries keeping them separated from each other and slowly going and moving and spreading into the different villages, okay, that's what's happened here, all right? It says, at first the clan had assumed that it would not survive. They didn't see it as a threat, because they only had stories from the people of Abomey. They don't have anybody from Umofia running to Mbanta and telling them, like, they're killing us, they're throwing us in prison, they're taking all of our people, okay? They're not doing that. So, in that epigraph, when it says things fall apart, the center cannot hold, the center being the center of, like, Igbo culture as a whole, okay? And so that's what we see here. Their hospitality lets them in, but the fact that there's fractures and cracks within their culture, okay, is what allows them to be successful. It says, when one came to think of it, the evil forest was a fit home for such undesirable people. So again, you know, kind of justifying it, right? We don't want them anyway. They can live in the evil forest. It was true that they were rescuing twins from the bush, but they never brought them into the village. As far as the villagers were concerned, the twins still remained where they had been, thrown away. Surely the earth goddess would not visit the sins of the missionaries on the innocent villagers. Okay? Still evidence that their belief system is still strong. They're trying to justify the things that they're doing. It says, but on one occasion the missionaries had tried to overstep the bounds. 3 converts had gone into the village and boasted openly that all the gods were dead and impotent and that they were prepared to defy them by burning all their shrines. So, what's happening, as well as the missionaries getting people to convert, they're also disrupting the social hierarchy of the Igbo, right? Because the first people to convert to Christianity in this sense are the clansmen that have been outcasted, that are on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the Igbo social structure, right? Because, well, my people don't want me, so let me go somewhere where I am going to be important and accepted. Okay, and given, a job, I'm going to feel important. I'm working for Mr. Kiaga, or I'm working for the district commissioner that you guys will meet later. So these people that are outcasts that have converted, they're getting a new sort of confidence. They never really mattered. No one paid attention to them before. But now they're going to kind of disrupt things a little bit. So it says... nothing happened for a long time between the church and the clan, but stories were already gaining ground that the white man had not only brought religion, but also a government. It was said that they had built a place of judgment in Umuofia to protect the followers of their religion. It was even said that they had hanged one man who killed a missionary. Okay? So, it's a contrast, right, to the Igwugwu and the way that they handle things and the way that they maintain order among their villages, right? They built like a prison, okay, and their punishments do not favor mercy. They hang people, they imprison them, and one job that we will see later that a lot of the converts get is to be a prison guard, okay? So you can imprison the people that outcasted you from your culture originally, right? Because a lot of the converts are outcasts, bottom of the social ladder, okay? So they get a new sense of power. And you made me feel pain because I was outcasted, so I'm going to make you feel physical pain, all right? If you ever take sociology or psychology, you'll probably read about this prison experiment. That's very interesting. So, similar idea here. So, it says, there was no question of killing a missionary here. As for Mr. Kiaga, despite his madness, he was harmless. So Mr. Kiaga, the guy that's running the church, is kind. He understands Igbo culture. He's not confrontational. He doesn't like a lot of conflict. He's just kind of there. It says, as for his converts, no one could kill them without having to flee from the clan. For in spite of their worthlessness, they still belonged to the clan. Okay? Yeah, you can go hang out with the missionaries, but like you still belong to us, essentially. Let's see. Nobody gave serious thought to the stories about the white man's government or the consequences of killing the Christians. If it became more troublesome than they already were, they would simply be driven out of the clan. Okay? So this is telling you the villagers and the clansmen's mindset. They still don't see them as being harmful. The missionaries have presented themselves, and they've gone about this in a very sneaky way. They're doing this very, very slowly, as not to alarm the clansmen and incite some sort of violence, right? And the clansmen are very naive to this, okay? They don't understand and they can't really see it. Sneaky takeover, establish themselves without alarm. That's what I have at the top of my book. The little church was, at that moment, too deeply absorbed in its own troubles to annoy the clan. It began over the question of admitting outcasts. So, again, these outcasts, that the new religion welcomed twins and such abominations, thought that it was possible that they would also be received. So one Sunday they went to the church. There was an immediate stir, but so great was the work of the new religion had done among the converts that they did not immediately leave the church when the outcasts came in. Those who found themselves nearest to them merely moved to another seat. So Christianity here is presented as being welcoming of those who do not have a home, who do not have a place, welcoming to anyone. It only lasted till the end of service. The whole church raised a protest, but Mr. Kiaga stops them and begins to explain. There is no slave or free. We are all children of God, and that we must receive these, our brothers. It says, one of them is like, oh, you don't understand. What will they say when they hear we take in the Osu, or, the outcasts, the losers, the abominations of our people? They will laugh. And Mr. Kiaga says, let them laugh. God will laugh at them on Judgment Day. Why do the nations rage and the peoples imagine a vain thing? He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Okay? So, I forget what chapter it is. Maybe it's 16. Okay? When the preacher is talking, I think Nwoye is like among them listening, but the way that the diction that Chinua Achebe uses is very intentional in the preacher or the missionary describing their religion. It's very positive, it's very accepting, it's very enlightening, it's very promising, and then the language and the diction that's used to describe the Igbo culture and tradition is like, that word says it all, right? The worship of sticks and rocks, right? It's very negative, it's very belittling, it's very kind of condescending in describing their religion here, right? But there's also that like veiled kind of like these veiled statements, right? Like, well, we'll be laughing at you on Judgment Day, or like this God, the true God, the only God, this and that. And it's almost like it's reminding, a subtle reminder here, right? Like, let them laugh. God will laugh at them on Judgment Day. Like, you don't need to do anything because the ultimate punishment will happen later, right? And the people who's converting says, you don't understand, you're our teacher, but you can't, and you can teach us the things of new faith, but this is a matter which we know, okay? And then it says, Mr. Kiaga is talking about that he says, he needs Christ more than you and I, said Mr. Kiaga. Then I shall go back to the clan, said the convert, and he went. Mr. Kiaga stood firm, and it was his firmness that saved the young church. The wavering converts drew inspiration and confidence from his unshakable faith. He ordered the outcasts to shave off their long, tangled hair. At first, they were afraid they might die. Okay? So, changing them in a physical sense, right, to make them more, I guess, assimilated among the church. It says, unless you shave off the mark of your heathen belief, I will not admit you to the church. You fear that you will die. Why should that be? How are you different from other men who shave their hair? The same God created you and them, but they have cast you out like lepers. It is against the will of God, who has promised everlasting life to all who believe in his holy name. The heathens say you will die if you do this or you do that, and you are afraid. They also said, I would die if I built my church on this ground. Am I dead? They say I would die if I took care of twins. I am still alive. The heathen speak nothing of falsehood. Only the word of our God is true. Okay? So Mr. Kiaga is using the beliefs and kind of the reasoning and the justification that the Igbo have had kind of against them, right? To get people to more strongly believe in his faith. It's persuading to them. Okay? And now you have evidence, your first evidence of conflict between the church, like real conflict, not just tension or like annoyance, of conflict between the missionaries, the people of the church, and the clansmen. So the outcasts shave off their hair, and it says, it was in fact one of them who in his zeal brought the church into serious conflict with the clan a year later by killing the sacred python. Okay? The royal python was the most revered animal in Mbanta and all the surrounding clans. It was addressed as Our Father and was allowed to go wherever it chose, even into people's beds. It ate rats in the house and sometimes swallowed the hens' eggs. If a clansman killed a royal python accidentally, He made sacrifices of atonement and performed expensive burial ceremony, such as was done for a great man. No punishment was prescribed for a man who killed a python knowingly or on purpose. Nobody thought that such a thing could happen. Okay? So, this is just a sacred symbol, in their culture, right? It's like the bald eagle, almost, right? You don't kill a bald eagle. Why don't we kill the bald eagle? I mean, I don't know. It's beautiful. It's endangered. Okay, but it's literally, I think it's like a felony to kill a bald eagle in the United States. But if you think about traditionally, there's a cultural contrast there, right? What the snake represents within Christianity is the personification of evil, of temptation. And when you think about the snake in Igbo spirituality, it is sacred. It is to be honored. It is to be preserved. Okay? It says, perhaps it never did happen. That was the way the clan first looked at it. No one had actually seen the man do it, but the story had risen among the Christians themselves. But all the same, the rulers and elders of Mbanta assembled to decide their action. So one of the converts had killed a royal python on purpose. Okay? It says, many of them spoke at great length and in fury. Spirit of wars was upon them. And of course, Okonkwo has asserted himself as influential person of authority in his motherland. Okonkwo, who had begun to play the part in the affairs of his motherland. Like 5 years later, at this point, he's gotten over, his pity party, and he's trying to help. Said that until the abominable gang was chased out of the village with whips, there would be no peace. Right? Okonkwo's like, we must drive them out. Okay? And nobody ever really agrees with Okonkwo and what he wants to do, right? They're like, no, we're not going to do that, okay? Just hush. What are we going to do? There were many others who saw the situation differently. They say, what do we do? The matter lies between him and God. We did not see it. And Okonkwo was like, no, we can't be cowards. If a man comes to my hut and defecates on the floor, what do? Shut my eyes? No. I take a stick and break his head. That is what a man does. Okay? So Okonkwo never willing, is unrelenting. He sees things in black and white, right? You did this. It is not between you and God. It is offensive, and we must punish you accordingly. Okay? So he has to change his mindset here. He hasn't really become enlightened or changed his thought process. Evidence that he still is the same, right? These people are daily pouring filth over us. We should not pretend to see. Okonkwo made a sound full of disgust. This was a womanly clan, he thought. Such a thing could never happen in his fatherland, Umofia. That line is very important. Okay? Such a thing could never happen in his fatherland, Umofia. Okay? I'm going to write that down because we're going to talk about that later. Okay. Why does he think that? Such a thing could never happen in Umofia. Why does he think that? Yeah, right? It's his fatherland. It's not his motherland. It's his fatherland. Okay? People in my fatherland don't act that way. Alright? They would never handle it this way. But I'm in my mother's land. What do I expect? Right? Okay? So, going to be surprised. Okay? Okonkwo has spoken the truth, said another man. We should do something, but let's ostracize these men. We would then not be held accountable for their abominations. Everyone spoke, and in the end, it was decided to ostracize the Christians. Okay? What does that word ostracize mean? Yeah, like exclude, ignore, disown, in a sense. Okay? And Okonkwo's not happy. He grinds his teeth in disgust, but there's a clear divide. Okay? The Christians had grown in number and were now a small community of men, women, and children, self-assured and confident. You have a new character here. He is the missionary. Mr. Kiago is just the interpreter, former Klansman, converted. Mr. Brown, the white missionary, paid regular visits to them. When I think that it is only 18 months since the seed was first sown among you, I marvel at what the Lord hath wrought. Okay, so it's only been 18 months. They've built, they're building a school, they've built a church, and they're a small community now functioning as on their own. Okay, they celebrate things. They celebrate Easter. They're getting ready to celebrate Easter. It's almost like a feast that the Igbo used to have, but it's like a nice Sunday lunch, whatever. They're getting ready, and the women tried to go get water from the stream, okay? And they come back, and Mr. Kiaga's like, well, what do you mean you couldn't get water? And one of the women says, the village has outlawed us. The bellman announced it last night, but it is not our custom to debar anyone from the stream or quarry, okay? So now the Klansmen are kind of doing things that they don't normally do. Another woman said, they want to ruin us. They will not allow us into the markets. They have all said so. So they're kind of cutting off their resources from the stream, from the market. Mr. Kiaga was going to send to the village for his men converts when he saw them coming in on their own. Of course, they had all heard the bellman, but they had never in all of their lives heard of a woman being debarred from the stream. Okay, and they're like, let's go, we're going to go talk to them, whatever. Mr. Kiaga restrained them. He wanted to know why they had been outlawed. They say that Okoli had killed the sacred python, and one man said, it is false, said another. Okoli told me himself that it was false. And then, says Okoli was not there to answer. He had fallen ill on the previous night, but before the day was over, he was dead. His death showed that the gods were still able to fight their own battles. The clan saw no reason for bothering the Christians anymore. Okay? So, because Okoli died, the Klansmen are like, no need to keep in conflict with them. The gods have taken care of it. They have spoken. Okay? He didn't die of disease or famine or anything like that. He's dead because the gods killed him for killing the sacred python. So, it is just no need for conflict anymore. We don't need to continue having conflict. Everything's fine now. Okay? That's the way they justify it. So, conflict is resolved. They're allowed to go to the stream and everything. Alright? So, very quickly, there's only two things that I want to point out to you here. Chapter 19. Okay? Chapter 19, it is the end of Okonkwo's exile. It is the final harvest. And what you need to know about this chapter is the way that Okonkwo characterizes his time. 7 wasted and weary years. They're dragging to a close. Okonkwo knew that he would have prospered even more in Umuofia and the land of his fathers, where men were bold and warlike. He would have climbed to the utmost heights. He regretted every day of his exile. People were kind to him, but that did not alter the facts. He had called the first child born to him Neka, Mother of Supreme, out of politeness. But 2 years later, when a son was born, he called him Umuofia, begotten in the wilderness. Okay, so Okonkwo has a couple of more children while in exile. He and Opierika are still friends. Okonkwo is excited to get everyone together. He's going to host a feast to say thank you to the men of his motherland. And so he wants to show his gratitude. Okay? And at the end, you get kind of the final warning from the elders, okay, in Okonkwo's motherland. It says, we're very thankful that we are having a feast here. Every man can see it in his own compound. We come together because it is good for the kinsmen to do. You may ask why I am saying this. I say it because I fear for the younger generation, for you people. He waved his arms where most of the young men sat. As for me, I have only a short while to live, and so have you, Chindu. But I fear for you young people, because you do not understand how strong is the bond of kinship. Okay, going back to our epigraph here, right? The center cannot hold. You do not know what it is to speak with one voice. What is the result? An abominable religion has settled among you. A man can now leave his father and his brothers. He can curse the gods of his father and his ancestors like a hunter's dog that suddenly goes mad on his master. I fear for you, I fear for the clan. He turned to Okonkwo and said, thank you for calling us together. Okay? So they feel thankful, they feel gratitude that they have the ability for everyone to come together and be together at the center like they once were, commenting on the fact that they don't spend their daily lives like this anymore. Okay? The culture, the society, the Igbo society is fractured in itself, right? The center cannot hold. Foreshadowing. Alright? Okay. I'm going to come around really quick and look at your books. We will have some time to read next week. We'll do some work with Things Fall Apart for the rest of the week. And when you get back from Thanksgiving,